Hello and welcome to another in a series of mystical perspectives. This one is on, of course, the spiritual mind power affirmations as we continue along with some of the wonderful seed thoughts to plant to help us in life. Today we're going to be talking about overcoming resistance to positive change. My name is Reverend Cindy Paulus. Happy to be here with you. I've been studying and teaching with the University of Metaphysics in its various forms over 50 years. And this particular talk is based on Dr. Master's book, Spiritual Mind Power Affirmations. And you can always go to metaphysics.com to find out more about these talks and look up Paul-Leon-Masters. You can also find this book, Spiritual Mind Power Affirmations, and also his first book, Mystical Insights. And there's a new book, Meditation Dynamics, which is also available, all three of these, at Amazon.com. So if you have the book, just for reference, this is page 64. And what we do is first I study this particular one page for a week, and then I write on it and get together and talk with you on these. First I share the affirmations from the book. So we'll go right into that now, starting with resistance source. I realize that resistance to making positive changes in my life comes from a personal sense of ego selfhood with its self-doubts, making even changes that would seem on the surface to improve my life circumstances. So again, a lot of us don't want to change, and we don't realize we don't want to change, and then we feel stuck and we don't know how to get out of being stuck. So this is referring to the resistant source, which is the ego. So let's repeat this affirmation. I realize that resistance to making positive changes in my life come from a personal sense of ego selfhood with its self-doubts about making even changes that would seem on the surface to improve my circumstances. The next one is fear. I realize that personal ego mind fear may be a reason for resisting even positive change, and so when I feel fear, I turn immediately to my Christ mind oneness with God to sublimate my fear into the light of God power, courage within me. And there's a lot of aspects here. We talk about fear, we talk about courage, we talk about the Christ mind oneness to use as a tool to overcome the fear. Of course, you first have to be aware that there is fear there, because sometimes we clothe our fears in many other ways so we don't recognize it as fear, because we don't want to think we're afraid, right? I mean, one way I've thought about this is if Christ came to you right now and said, follow me, and you knew that this was like the ultimate in your spiritual progress and that you could actually be in total service and oneness with God, would you drop everything and follow Christ? I think many of us would not. I even have to question myself there, because we get into a comfortable zone in our life and we're afraid of losing or changing that or upsetting the apple cart, even if what we are looking at could be a much better way of life and bring us more happiness. So repeating fear. I realize that personal ego mind fear may be a reason for resisting even positive change. And so, when I feel fear, I turn immediately to my Christ mind oneness with God to sublimate my fear into the light of God, power, courage within me. With that strength, behind you, you can move mountains. So it's a good thing to always remember when fear raises its head. The next affirmation is unknown. I realize that I may resist positive change because of the unknown associated with the change, and instead turn inward to God's presence that knows all that can be known, which thus removes a blockage from the unknown in my mind. Well, this has a lot of aspects to it, doesn't it? Because Dr. Master's first book was Mystical Insights, Knowing the Unknown. But how can you know the unknown, right? If the unknown is unknown, part of us is having to accept that there is an unknown. And what does that take to live in unknown? Well, first of all, again, you have to let go of fear, and you have to have a lot of faith that there is this aspect that is not out of your control. Your control may be very small in relation to the world or your life even. But if you turn it over to God, well, then you can let go and let God be in control. So repeating the unknown affirmation, I realize that I may resist positive changes because of the unknown associated with the change, and instead turn inward to God's presence that knows all that can be known, which thus removes a blockage from the unknown in my mind. The next affirmation is punishment. I realize that God has already forgiven me for all that I believe I should be punished for, and thus I'm free to make positive changes for my good at once. This is really interesting. It kind of goes back to the old guilt trips, right? Has anyone there been ever raised in guilt trips from a partner, from your family, from your church? It's going back to punishment here. I realize that God has already forgiven me for all that I believe I should be punished for, and thus I'm free to make positive changes for my good at once. So the question is, do you think that you're not good enough or worthy, that you're living what you're living like because you've done something wrong, you deserve to be punished? That has got to be removed, all right? That's a major blockage which should be removed. And you need to really look inside and see if that's an aspect that might be affecting your life. The next one is responsibility. I realize that I may resist making positive changes because of doubting that I could handle the responsibilities, knowing that I will turn it over to God's presence within me, which will surface to handle the responsibility. And this is a biggie, because a lot of us don't want to handle a lot of responsibility. We don't want to have to deal with what we're responsible for. A lot of times we shuffle it off on other people. But here's this affirmation to say again in response to that. I realize that I may resist making positive changes because of doubting that I could handle the responsibilities, knowing that I will turn it over to God's presence within me, which will surface to handle the responsibility. And the next one's poor self-esteem. That's a biggie, huh? I realize that resistance to positive change comes from poor self-esteem created by a personal ego mind sense of selfhood, and thus choose instead Christ mind awareness that my true self-reality is always one with God and God's attributes. So poor self-esteem is a huge factor in a lot of people's lives. And it can be, again, going back to many things in your life. It can go back to your childhood. It can go back to an abusive relationship. But whatever it is, it always has to be addressed, because it can be a huge limiting factor in your life. So repeating this important affirmation, I realize that resistance to positive change comes from poor self-esteem created by a personal ego mind sense of selfhood, and thus choose instead Christ mind awareness that my true self-reality is always one with God and God's attributes. And the last one here is non-support. I realize that resistance to making positive changes may come from feeling alone in my efforts of being non-supported. Thus, I turn inward to God's presence as my support in all I must do to improve my life. So, a lot of times if you're a loner and you do things you don't feel like other people really can support you, and you think and doubt whether you can handle making a major change, which can be a huge task, especially if you're moving or doing something like that, and you feel like you don't have the support you need to make those changes, you may just avoid it, right? So repeating this affirmation, I realize that resistance to making positive changes may come from a feeling that I am alone in my efforts or being non-supported. Thus, I turn inward to God's presence as my support in all I must do to improve my life. Now, that's the last of the affirmations there. A lot of aspects of that have to do with what you need to do when you go into meditation. And interesting, usually Dr. Masters has an affirmation about meditation on this, and this one didn't include that. But in meditation, we know that we can uncover and release the shadow, the things that we fear, the aspects of ourselves that are hidden, that we sometimes work very hard to hide. But once we see these things and recognize them, which we do in these affirmations and meditation, then the next step is really putting into action the steps you need to make those changes. So, of course, it may not be easy, but what you have to always keep your eye on is, if you want some good positive change, you have to risk sometimes doing things that put you outside your comfort zone. So you have to ask yourself certain questions. Are you stuck in certain places in your life? Are you stuck in safe or that comfort zone? And what would it take to get you out of that comfort zone? What carrot could you imagine that leaves that door open to make some more positive changes that may be waiting? Are you codependent in life, right? Maybe that's part of the aspect of it. Are you afraid, as we were talking about, of changes? What part of you is limiting and not believing that you can fulfill your true destiny? So, if you want to create a new life, if you want to be successful, you sometimes really have to face what's stopping you from doing that. Are you stuck in safe? Is it security versus opportunity? Is there disbelief in the beyond the ordinary way of life? And then ask yourself why. You've got to bridge that possibility of where you are to where you really want to be to fulfill your true purpose in life and make changes to make that happen. I always write down things after I meditate. I take some time to write what comes to me, and I wrote this: with a breath of love the world can change. In a single spinning round the sun, the way you perceive things can be rearranged. For the world is just a staging place. We can choose how we act and react every day. All creation is a palette, and we are the artists who paint the reflection of our conception to express how things are framed and what we see. And when we understand that life is good all the time, and we open up our hearts to believe there's a certain grace that comes, and we can be set free. For with love, your life can change, and even the scarred heart can be healed. So let a little more light come in and let your soul be revealed. God is good when you believe that miracles can happen, and when you allow yourself to really receive the blessings of life that are alive in that love that lives in you and me. And that is that presence, that Christ presence, right? That lives inside us. We have to make room for that presence, and possibly, maybe, we're not making room for that presence because we're afraid that that presence, again, might make us change. This is a huge factor. We've got to realize Well, I'm going to use a little story that I kind of felt like when I experienced this. Years ago, I lived in Sonoma County, and they did balloon flights. I happened to be afraid of heights and looking down. And so there I was going up in this hot air balloon, and I was actually even doing a live remote on the radio, calling it. And as the balloon rose and rose and rose, I just found myself gripping on to these, it's a rope, basically, a very, very heavy-duty rope that holds the basket you stand in to the balloon. So I'm holding the rope so hard that my fingernails are digging into my hands, and I just had to stop and laugh. I'm going, what am I holding on to? I'm holding on to a rope that goes to a balloon. It isn't anything solid. It's flying through the air. Holding onto the rope isn't going to keep me from falling. It's not going to do anything. But I'm holding on for dear life, right? And then I pried my hands loose, and I allowed myself to look out and see how beautiful the view was and how magical it was. But it's interesting how we hold on in our lives. And sometimes we're not aware that we're holding on for dear life because we're afraid of something. So you have to really look and be aware of it, which these affirmations and meditations can do. And once you recognize that you're holding on to something because you're afraid, then you can begin to release. One of the big Buddhist practicings is non-attachment. And some people have a hard time with it because they don't like being non-attached. They like very much being attached to their things, their house, their lifestyle, to their beliefs. But then what can happen? I mean, if we look at the fires that have happened in California this year, if we look at some of the disasters from the hurricanes, there is more and more an increasing situation where people who thought they had a secure life and lifestyle are completely losing everything. Their house can burn down in a few minutes. A hurricane can come in and wipe out a huge area of life. You can lose everything that you have. So if you learn detachment and non-attachment, and you instead find that way, you can find that inner abundance and trust and faith in God within, you can survive these things. And you can find that inner courage to face whatever changes you have to do to start your life over again. You can have a new beginning. So we really have to take a look at we sooner or later are going to face that moment where we have to face our passing on, our death of our body. And believe me, at that point, you're going to become non-attached. Everything you have around you that you were attached to is going to be gone when you pass on. And only the love remains, right? So the time is really here. I mean, it's so amazing when we really think of what can happen and the good things that can come, that we can replace the things that are old and stuck that aren't serving us any longer, right? If you're really holding back, if you're hearing that call to make a change, it's time to open up that door. We're all on this long, long journey. We all have to let go and pass on. We all have to be born again. We all have to face new beginnings. And so this is part of the life lessons we have. And this is what's waiting for you if you have the heart's passion to use what tools that you've been given by God, these gifts. Those can be used in whatever life that you really need to be living. You can call upon your soul. You can call upon God. You can call upon your dreams. You can call upon your visions. You can call upon your affirmations. You have all these tools. You can call upon friends. If you're one of those people who find that you are on the spiritual path, you will find there's times that you have an inner strength to actually be given the gifts you need to make the changes you need. But you have to believe it, right? You have to really realize that that power of the God's presence, that love in your life is there, and you can believe that that blessing is given to you, and you indeed can truly make the changes you need, the positive changes. That the time is right here. It's always here. It's always right now. And you can let that light shine bright right now and be the truth of who you are and be present in light. And you can believe it. You can have faith. The new day is really here. And the time has come right now to become the love of God here in your life. So let go and let God, right? Be open to change into whatever God may be willing to bring you. Let that teacher within and your guides guide you on the way to whatever may best serve you and others. Be a servant of your purpose and a child of God to learn whatever lessons are waiting for you ahead. It's a huge step, but you know what? Once you open up the way and take a step towards those changes, you'll be amazed what opportunities and what doors open. It is really a beautiful thing to see and watch. And there's many, many stories and many books written about this. But indeed, there's a whole big world waiting out there, and you can live what you want to live and be what you want to be, but you have to be smart, you have to be aware, you have to get your tools together, and you have to plan, and you have to set a goal, and you have to take steps toward it every day. I'm going to close today with the Aramaic Lord's Prayer, which I usually do each week, actually. I love this version of the Aramaic Lord's Prayer. Father, Mother of the Cosmos, shimmering light of all, focus your light within us as we breathe your holy breath. Enter the sanctuary of our heart, uniting within us the sacred rays of your power and beauty. Let your heart's desire unite heaven and earth through our sacred union. Help us to fulfill what lies within the circle of our lives today. Forgive our secret fears as we freely choose to forgive the secret fears of others. Let us not enter into forgetfulness tempted by false appearances, for from your astonishing fire comes the eternal song, which sanctifies all, renewed eternally in our life and throughout creation. We seal these words in our hearts, committed in trust and faith. Today's talk was based on Dr. Paul Leon Masters' Spiritual Mind Affirmations. It's a lovely book that's available on Amazon and metaphysics.com, as well as the other book that he first wrote, Mystical Insights, and his new book, Meditation Dynamics. All three of those are on Amazon as well. And you can go to metaphysics.com and look at some of the opportunities that exist there to change your life, to build a new life in the metaphysical field, to become a metaphysical minister, get a doctorate. And the lectures are all available as well. If you go to metaphysics.com, you'll find a lecture on the subject. If you go to metaphysics.com and then do /Paul-Leon-lectures, okay? Lots of information there for you. And also, I have over 30 of these talks so far, and I have them all posted absolutely free to be able to listen to and check out on my website, mysticalperspectives.com. That's mysticalperspectives.com. I also air these talks on a radio station. They're part of the University of Sedona that I program, which is called KUOSFM.com, KUOSFM.com, and I do those on Sunday morning. We have a series of talks starting at 9 and going till it's 9 o'clock and through 10 o'clock, so it's 9 till 11. Thank you so much for listening and being a part of the energy field here today. I wish you the blessing of positive changes so you may fulfill your true life's destiny.